Fear is a basic human emotion. What frightens you more? The evil that you know? Or the evil that you don't know?
First Encounter Assault Recon is a first-person shooter that stands out for blending intense gunplay with a chilling horror atmosphere. Released in 2005, it quickly became a landmark title for its groundbreaking AI, dynamic combat, and psychological horror elements. In my review, we'll explore how F.E.A.R combines fast-paced action with spine-tingling moments, delivering an experience that keeps you on edge while satisfying your desire for tactical shooting. From its eerie environments to its explosive firefights, let's deep dive into what makes F.E.A.R a memorable gaming experience. Developed by Monolith Productions and released in 2005, F.E.A.R became a success due to several standout elements that set it apart in the first-person shooter genre. The unique blend of horror and action combined intense first-person shooter mechanics with psychological horror elements, a rare mix for the time. The game drew inspiration from Japanese horror, using disturbing imagery, sudden scares, and a creepy atmosphere. Alma, the ghostly antagonist, became an iconic figure in gaming due to her terrifying presence throughout the game. Another of the game's most praised features was its advanced AI system. Enemy soldiers in F.E.A.R used squad tactics, flanked the player, and responded intelligently to changes in their environment. This made combat encounters feel dynamic and unpredictable, adding to the game's challenge. F.E.A.R featured a reflex, slow-motion mechanic, otherwise known as bullet time, allowing the player to briefly slow down time during firefights. This system not only made the action more cinematic, but also gave the player an edge against the aggressive AI. The combination of fast-paced gunplay and slow-motion combat created a visceral, satisfying experience. The mid-2000s saw a cultural obsession with bullet time, a visual effect popularized by The Matrix in 1999, in which a moment of action is slowed down while the camera moves through the scene at normal speed. This gave the impression that time was almost frozen, allowing audience to see every detail of the action from multiple angles. Several factors contributed to this trend. The Matrix, as previously stated, had a massive cultural impact when it introduced bullet time as a way to enhance the high-octane action sequences. Especially in the iconic scene where Neo dodges bullets, the film's combination of philosophy, sleek aesthetic, and groundbreaking visual effects left a huge impression on both audiences and filmmakers. Bullet time quickly became a symbol of futuristic, cool action scenes where many different forms of media try to replicate or pay homage to it. The widespread use of CGI in motion picture capture in the early 2000s allowed filmmakers to experiment with new kinds of visual effects, including bullet time. The ability to slow down time and move the camera around the action gave a new dimension to fight sequences, explosions, and stunts. The technique became easy to replicate as digital technology advanced, making it more accessible to filmmakers across different budgets. Bullet time's popularity spread beyond films and into video games, commercials, and even music videos. F.E.A.R integrated bullet time mechanics, allowing players to slow down action and create a sense of heightened control in combat. It became a key selling point for these games, adding to the feeling of being inside a movie-like experience. But by the mid-2000s, it had moved from being a groundbreaking visual effect to something that could feel expected, losing its impact over time. Bullet time encapsulated the era's fascination with technology, virtual reality, and alternate perceptions of time and space. It dovetailed with the rise of the internet culture, sci-fi fandom, and digital futurism. The effect was not just a filmmaking tool, but also represented how people were starting to think about the world in terms of a digital experience and altered realities. By the late 2000s, the trend had died down as filmmakers moved on to new visual techniques like continuously long takes and hyper-realistic CGI. However, bullet time remains a symbol of the early 2000s filmmaking innovation in pop culture and fit in well with F.E.A.R's combat gameplay. An important mechanic involves upgrading the player's health and reflexes, aka bullet time. These upgrades significantly impact gameplay by enhancing your survivability and combat abilities. First, reflex boosters. Again, bullet time. Reflex boosters are scattered throughout various levels, often hidden in less obvious areas. Finding these gives you, the player, an advantage as prolonged use of bullet time ability is key to surviving intense firefights and handling enemies more effectively. The reflex boosters are crucial for making the most of the game's core mechanic, being able to perceive and react to events in slow motion, which enhances your combat precision and awareness. Health boosters are the other upgrades you can acquire, increasing your maximum health, allowing more survivability in combat. Since enemies in F.E.A.R can be challenging at times, having more health can be the difference between life and death in firefights. Similar to reflex boosters, health boosters are hidden throughout the game's levels. Players need to explore areas off the main path to find them. Upgrading health ensures you can take more damage before dying, which is particularly useful in combat situations where multiple enemies are attacking, or when facing stronger foes or bosses. You as a player are encouraged to explore the levels thoroughly to find as many reflex and health boosters as possible. Missing these upgrades can make later parts of the game significantly harder. I found myself looking behind every corner, wall, dark place just to maybe find an upgrade. Collecting reflex boosters early can make fights much easier, as bullet time allows for greater tactical advantage, but health boosters ensure you survive longer. So it's important to collect both types as frequently as possible. Both upgrades are permanent and stack as you collect them, giving a clear sense of progression as you enhance your capabilities throughout the game. The upgrade system in itself was very refreshing. It was straightforward and intuitive, allowing players to enhance their abilities without overwhelming complexities. This simplicity let me focus more on the gameplay and the horror elements rather than getting bogged down in complicated upgrade trees. It's a great example of how less can be more. Other pickups include health packs. The game's pacing, design, and health system rarely makes you feel on the verge of death or desperate for health packs. This contrasts with some other first-person shooters where survival is more frantic and you're often scrounging for resources. F.E.A.R tends to avoid these moments of extreme vulnerability. Throughout the game, I found a generous supply of health packs, allowing me to heal between encounters. Rather than scrambling to find a way to survive, I would often have enough health kits to buffer damage. This contributed to feeling secure, even in tense moments. F.E.A.R is known for its advanced AI that makes enemy encounters dynamic and challenging. However, the AI's tactics behavior doesn't often overwhelm the player. Instead of brute force, enemies work together and use cover, which creates exciting but manageable fights. The game's challenge often comes from strategic positioning rather than being outgunned or overwhelmed. The game introduces its mechanics at steady pace, allowing players to feel progressively more powerful as they gather more health packs, weapons, and upgrades. Rather than feeling like you're always on the back foot, F.E.A.R gives you the tools to dominate the combat scenarios they've placed in. While F.E.A.R excels in atmosphere and tension, especially with its horror elements, it is designed to make you feel empowered in combat, with enough resources and technical options to rarely feel on the brink of death. This balance adds to enjoyment, as the horror doesn't stem from survival challenges, but from the eerie atmosphere and unsettling moments. However, if you're looking for more of a survival challenge, this might make the game feel less intense in terms of health management. One criticism is a lack of enemy variety. The majority of enemies are standard clone soldiers or replicas with similar combat patterns, relying heavily on squad tactics. While these soldiers offer clever AI and a challenge, you often face the same types of engagements throughout the game, making combat feel repetitive after a while. Besides replica soldiers, the main threats are Alma, the ghostly antagonists, and occasional elite enemies like assassins and heavy armored units. These encounters are less frequent compared to the overabundance of standard soldiers, contributing to the overall sense of sameness in combat. Given that F.E.A.R blends horror with action, more creative and terrifying enemy designs could have amplified the F.E.A.R factor. Instead, the game leans heavily on the same foes, leaving players wanting more eerie and unpredictable enemies, especially for a game that hinges on psychological horror. There is also a noticeable lack of standout boss encounters. Many FPS games of the era offered memorable boss fights to break up the standard combat, but F.E.A.R doesn't provide much in this regard, which could have added variety to the game's pacing. The lack of enemy variety prevents F.E.A.R from reaching its full potential. More diverse enemy designs, particularly drawn from the horror elements, could have added more depth and unpredictability to the gameplay. Alright, now let's discuss the weapons. Probably the most important part about a first-person shooter are the weapons. How do the weapons feel? Are the weapons dynamic enough? Are there enough differences between each one? So I'm just gonna wave top, if you will, the different types of weapons, what they have, what they are, and kind of how I enjoyed them. So in F.E.A.R, there are 10 different types of weapons, ranging all the way from rocket launchers to pistols. The smaller weapons, such as the pistols and the machine pistols, they shoot smaller ammunition, and obviously they're doing less damage. Whereas you have your ASP, your G2A2 assault rifle, and your shotguns, your mid-grade weapons do moderate damage, but they're not completely devastating. Lastly, you have your large, heavy weapons, such as your repeating cannon, your particle weapon, my personal favorite, and also the rocket launcher. F.E.A.R has a good variety of weapons. It's not absolutely insane, where you could never be happy with the weapon you have, such as Borderlands, but it does have some variety where you're not just carrying one weapon throughout the game. With the 10 different weapons, there's a weapon for every different type of playstyle. For me, I liked using the shotgun, the G2A2 assault rifle, and the particle weapon. In all, F.E.A.R's gunplay did very well for the time when it came out. I very much enjoyed using my bullet time with my weapons. Another unfortunate downfall of F.E.A.R were the controls. Some of the control schemes and mechanics felt outdated to myself. Many modern shooters allowing continuous sprinting or offered a stamina bar, but in F.E.A.R, movement speed is generally slower and there is no dedicated sprint mechanic, which felt restrictive. The weapon switching system was tied to right button or RB on the Xbox, and with the button mapping not being customizable in turn brought many issues. The inability to rebind buttons meant that I had to, it was not intuitive for me. In a game where precise controls is crucial, not being able to adjust the controls affected the overall gameplay experience and performance. Coming from other games with difficulty to adjust to the default setup in F.E.A.R. Multiple times I wanted to ADS and I pulled left trigger, but due to the lack of rebinding controls, I would throw a grenade. My biggest complaint are the non-customizable controls in the Xbox 360 version, limiting flexibility and comfort, impacting my overall enjoyment of the game. F.E.A.R employed clever use of first-person perspective to heighten immersion, integrated jump scares, and unsettling moments without breaking the player's control. This commitment to the cinematic experience made it feel more like a psychological horror film at times, deepening my investment. The game's innovation, pacing, AI, unique mix of horror and action, cinematic combat, and eerie atmosphere, all of which set it apart from other first-person shooters of its time. If you haven't played 2005 F.E.A.R, you need to go play it. Thank you for being here. If you agree with what I had to say, throw a thumbs up on there. If you want to discuss something, if I missed something that you like, if I didn't say something correctly, by all means, throw it in the comments. and I hope you all enjoyed the video. Take care.